Genshin 5.8's banners are looking stacked, so today I aim to help you decide who to spend your precious Primogems on. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. We'll kick things off with Ineffa. This character is looking to be pretty good for Electrocharge, especially because she's bringing her own fun little twist to it. That being, Lunar Electrocharged. She's going to make Electrocharged be able to crit, which is a pretty interesting thing. So she's definitely going to be an excellent pull if you're somebody that's looking to improve their Electrocharge teams. She's also likely to be good for Electrocharged characters going forward. She also just brings a lot to the table in general. Not only is she introducing Lunar Electrocharged, but she's also able to provide your team with a shield, on top of having personal damage potential. That's a lot all in one kit. And I certainly expect her to improve the performance of basically any Electrocharge team going forward. I'd like to point out her synergy with everybody's favorite, Mr. Settle Down! After all, it's not a Genshin Impact update without this guy getting at least one new teammate. And let me tell you, Ineffa is one of them. It's likely to end up being a very strong Electrocharge team, and will most likely be her strongest use case upon release. So if you're a proud owner of the Hydro Dragon, and you've got your eye on Ineffa, well then good for you. I should also mention that she's coming out right before Not Cry. This is both a good and a bad thing. Now the good side of it, it's very likely that she's going to become stronger in the brand new region, whether that be through new artifact sets, through new weapons, or through new teammates. I do believe that one of those things is going to happen, because Lunar Charged is an entirely new mechanic. We basically have no specific gear in the game as of now that particularly tailors to it, so I think it's very likely that we're going to get some brand new stuff that's definitely going to indirectly make Ineffa stronger. And I should point out, Ineffa isn't bad at all. I don't think that she's going to be a bad character on release whatsoever. Consider this, Emily on her release, I personally felt like she was in a worse position than Ineffa, and whenever she came out, I also felt like she was a pretty decent unit all around, even before Kaniche. Obviously, the Dendro lad with his pixel buddy did end up making her a lot better, but you get the point. I personally feel like Ineffa on release is going to be better than Emily on release. So when you consider that there's potential for her to get even more gear, I honestly think her future's looking pretty bright. Now I will say this, I wouldn't pull her now just based on the fact that she could become better. I would rather just get her on her rerun then, after she's gotten all the good gear. Only get her now if you're impressed with her current performance. And I will say, she's not going to be that broken on launch, because she is going to be very good for Novelette, but outside of his teams, she's mostly just going to be helping out Electrocharged and bringing it up to a more competitive position. Now if that's something that you're interested in, then great, she achieves that just fine, but I'd say that she's perfectly skippable if you're somebody that doesn't really care about EC teams. And I will say, as it currently stands, Lunar Electrocharged, like I said, it doesn't have any gear pertaining to it at the minute. It's going to have Ineffa's signature weapon, and that is just about it. I do expect us to get some sort of free-to-play friendly craftable whenever we head into Not Cry, but as it currently stands, it is looking a tad rough. Now, all that aside, I'm going to be putting her into A tier for the value rankings of this patch. She's ultimately pretty good at what she does. I think she is indeed a good investment to make if you're interested in Electrocharged. She is a perfectly fine skip, you don't need her by any means, but she is good. Then we move on to Crazy Granny Citlali. This character's still really good even now. In fact, I believe that she's really good, simply because she is a part of the current best team in the game, that being Moika DPS teams. She is the de facto best assault melt support for her. She's able to provide Pyro Res Shred for her, and offer plenty of cry application, not to mention being able to hold R5 TDDS if you're not using sack frags. She's also able to slot herself into Chasca teams, considering that character is able to deal a multitude of different damage types. If you have a Pyro and a Hydro character in your Chasca team, well then Citlali is going to be shredding that. She's also quite strong for Skirk teams, because although she does not buff the cryo damage of a team, you're basically always going to have at least one Hydro damage dealer within a Skirk comp, so her Hydro Red Shred is going to be relevant there. She's also able to slot herself in with Novelette, and is all around just the definitive best melt support for any Pyro DPS. If you main somebody like Arlecchino or Moika, then I 100% think that Citlali is a good investment. She's going to be able to elevate your Pyro DPSs to the next level. I should also add that she's capable of doing her own amount of personal damage. It's nothing crazy, but she has really high EM scalings in her kit, so if you dump her with EM, then you'll also be able to get a little bit of extra damage out of her. All around, she's just an excellent support for basically any Pyro main, and she's a really good pickup for Skirk too. I think that going into Not Cry, she's still going to be relevant for quite some time, considering that she's quite niche. She is a melt support. Unless Hoiverse releases another Pyro DPS of different mechanics soon, I don't think that they're going to power creep Citlali. Now granted, Hoiverse can be a little silly considering the short time gap between Arlecchino and Moika's release, but logically speaking, I personally believe that Citlali is going to continue to be a good investment for some time. And I'd really like to emphasize something. She's not just good with anyone, she's good with Moika, the current best DPS in the game. That is a very, very high tier of status. I personally think that if you're an integral support to one of the absolute most well-performing teams in the entire game, that definitely adds a lot of credit to your name. If you're a Moika player and you main her, you really do want to get Citlali. Trust me, if you feel like your Moika strong now, just wait until you get your hands on this crazy grandma. I'm putting her into S tier for the value rankings of this patch. She's very, very strong when you consider that she's so good for Moika, and she's very good for some of her top tier DPSs as well. Now, if you don't play any of those top tier DPSs, then she might not be as useful to you, but you probably play at least one of the characters that she's able to synergize really well with. Then we move on to Mualani. She's a very good Hydra DPS. Excellent for single target scenarios, and over the course of Notlan, she's definitely gained a ton of new teammates. She's all around a pretty good DPS investment. I'd say that we have plenty of good main DPSs to choose from at this point, so there's not really any particular reason to go for her, especially when we have Novelette. But she's definitely still a high potential unit, and you're able to pair her with plenty of good Notlan characters, such as Phainon, Citlali, Moika, you get the idea. In fact, I'd say one of her greatest appeals is how flexible she is teams-wise. This was actually the case on her release, and I feel like that's only continued to be the case over time. This means that she's honestly not a bad beginner pull at all if you're somebody that's just starting out and looking to pick up your first ever 5-star main DPS. She's not great in scenarios that have a ton of targets, but I'd say in situations where there's maybe like 2 or 3, she fares just fine. You're also able to play her as a viable Skirk support by putting her on 4-piece Cinder City and giving her R5 TDDS. It's shockingly not even that bad. She genuinely just has a plethora of great use cases, and I personally think that she's a great character to get if you're somebody that's just starting out. I feel like if you already have a really defined DPS roster, she's not really going to do much for you, especially if you already have Novelette. If you're seriously lacking a good DPS that can take care of single target, then sure, she's going to be able to help with that. But I think whether Mualani is a good pull for your particular account just depends on whether you really need another DPS or not, or whether you really need a Hydra DPS or not. If your answer is yes to either of those questions, then she's going to be able to serve you very well. But if your answer is no to both of those questions, then she really is just going to be somebody that you're pulling for fun. Because while she is definitely strong, I feel like if you already have some well-defined teams, there's not really that much use for her. I'm going to be putting her into A tier for the value rankings of this patch. She is good. I would like to emphasize that I do genuinely think this is a great DPS, but the competition is really strong right now. Notlan has no shortage of really strong DPS characters. And while she's definitely a great beginner pull, I can't really see her being that excellent for somebody that already has numerous DPSs on their account. Then we move on to a character whose meta strength has honestly surprised me over time. That would be Chasca. She has ended up being far more useful to me than I ever could have expected. Her greatest quality, in my opinion, is her insane adaptability. You can put her in so many situations and she's going to do so well, because of how inherently flexible her teams are. She just wants to play with a bunch of different elements. And that naturally opens the way to some really fun synergies. For example, using Shenhe, because it boosts up her charged attack Cryo Bullet. There's so many unique combos that you're able to use with this character, which lends her to being amazing in so many different teams, because so many different supports are able to work with her. It's really cool. She can also just sort of automatically avoid some enemy attacks, because she attacks from the air, which is pretty nice if you ask me. And she's also great for fighting enemies that move around the air, because she's able to chase after them and then shoot them while they're up there. I will say, it does get kind of tragic if there are lots of targets on the field at the same time. You ideally only really want to be playing her in scenarios that have 2 targets or less, ideally 1. But in those situations, she's going to serve you shockingly well. And I'm just gonna say it now, I think that her Notlan exploration is easily the second best. I personally put Kinich as the #1 best Notlan exploring character because I feel like his grapple is so versatile, but other than that, Chasca's flying has been ridiculously useful to me. It's just really hard to counter Chasca in general. Now unfortunately, she does run into the same issue as Mualani. Both of these characters are quite flexible in their own unique way. However, they're competing with a very, very tough DPS roster at the minute. Everyone at the top of the totem pole is very strong. That doesn't mean Mualani and Chasca are bad, it just means that they're up against a lot of competition. So I would say, despite Chasca being just a very comfortable character to use in general against so many situations, I would evaluate, are you struggling with AoE more than single target? Because if you are, I don't think Chasca's gonna help you there much. And once again, do you need another DPS? Once again, she has her own qualities that make her worth pulling, even if she's not the strongest DPS of them all, because she truly is just that versatile in a good way. Yet with that being said, do you really need those qualities, or are you just fine with what you've currently got? I'm gonna be putting her into A tier for the value rankings of this patch. She definitely has value. She is a good DPS for sure, and she has definitely stood the test of time. Not a necessary character by any means, but I do think you're going to be pleasantly surprised by how surprisingly good she is. I'm gonna be honest, Hoyoverse is really throwing some pretty good banners our way before Not Cry comes out, so I would be precautious. Now the good news is that we've already seen all the characters that are going to be coming up in Not Cry, so if any of them interest you, you can already make your decision now. Are you gonna save for them, or are you gonna pull somebody in 5.8? Well, you've got the information now, so it's up to you. What is gonna be worth it for you? Let me know down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, I have a silly second channel where I just kind of cover whatever in regards to gacha games. Head on over and check that out if it's something that you're interested in. Hopefully this video was able to tell you who'd get you the best bang for your Primogems in version 5.8. This has been Juice, signing out. And I sure as hell am skipping 5.8 because I'm all in for Varka.